nutrition, they eat by absorption, meaning when they land on your bread, for example, they being a mold, what they do is they secrete their enzymes onto the bread. They digest the bread on the outside, and they soak up the pre-digested nutrients. So they eat by absorption. Most are saprobes, meaning they decay dead things. Okay. Some even trap and kill microscopic worms. I'll show you a picture of that. If they do, for example, if they trap and kill microscopic nematodes or roundworms, they use these structures to kind of penetrate them. Now, Haustoria are found on pathogenic fungi. It's a type of hyphae because all fungi components, if they're multicellular, they're all hyphae. So Haustoria is basically a type of hyphae that literally punctures its host and absorbs the nutrients out. Kind of scary. So Haustoria is basically with pathogenic fungi. It's a type of hyphae. They puncture their host and they absorb the nutrients. It's called Haustoria. They can do this with plants as well as animals. It's been recently shown that some fungi can actually use ionizing radiation and they transform it into chemical energy. That's really weird. Most fungi are aerobic, like you all. Yeast, for example, yeast are facultative anaerobes, which means they are aerobic, but if need be, they can do fermentation. That's why people use yeast, right, for making foods like bread and wine and alcohol makes sense. They're just doing fermentation, eating their food without oxygen present. Okay, here we go. Look at this. Here's this poor roundworm, a nematode, okay? And oh gosh, he's being attacked by Haustoria. These are fungal filaments, but since they're attacking this guy, they're going to actually puncture him and take out his nutrients, okay? That's Haustoria. This guy's going to die eventually. He's going to be punctured, he's going to die. That is bad. And how do these guys reproduce?
Stabbed to death.
He's going to be stabbed to death exactly with Haustoria. Now, all of them can do asexual reproduction. All of them. They can all do asexual reproduction with mitosis, followed by cytokinesis. Got it? And some of them can also reproduce sexually. Now, here's the deal. In terms of how you classify fungi, this you need to know. Now, I did not hold you accountable to prozoans, right? It's just too many classifications. It's too many to know. But you need to know the classification of the fungi. There's only but 4 of them. And you can learn 4, makes sense? You can learn 4. Now, in terms of those 4 classifications, it's based on how they reproduce sexually. So I repeat, in terms of how you classify fungi, it's based on how they reproduce sexually. And I will hold you accountable to those 4. Now, in terms of asexual reproduction, for yeast, we just do budding. We talked about that already, right? So yeast do budding, that's asexual reproduction. I talked about the pseudohyphae, or pseudohypha. Okay, hypha is just one. If there's an E after, that's hyphae, that's just more than one. Make sense? Okay. Now, yeast can make the pseudohypha or pseudohyphae when they do budding, correct? And the buds, what? Never separate. So it forms, quote, filaments, right? But they're not true filaments. It's just individual cells that are what? Stuck together. They never separate. Now, filamentous fungi, like your molds and mushrooms, puffballs, earth stars, etc., when they're doing asexual reproduction, they form lightweight spores that can travel over a large distance. Now, most of you seen that, right? If you were in lab recently, you brought back your little plates, you had all kinds of nice fuzzy mold on there. You were freaked out by it. Mold spores are everywhere, right? You saw that. They're everywhere. And you're breathing them in what? Right now. Right now, you're taking in mold spores. But luckily, right, your immune system takes care of that. Make sense? So don't take your immune system for granted. Because all the mold that was on your plate, guess what? You're breathing it right on in. Makes sense? But you don't get sick by that. Okay. Now, these type of hyphae are basically used for asexual reproduction. Got it? These are forms of asexual reproduction. These are all hyphae in the reproductive structure. Now, I will hold you accountable for these structures. I will. This type is called a sporangiophore because it makes spores, okay? I liken these guys like little lollipops, right? So if you can remember, if that sporangiophores look like lollipops, you're in good shape, okay? You got the little stick and the candy on top. Now, the top part where the candy would be, the top part, that's called the sporangium. Okay? So the top part here, where the candy would be, that's your sporangium. That is actually the spore-forming structure, make sense? The stalk, okay, that's your sporangiophore. The candy, that's the sporangium, it makes the spores, and the spores are what? Sporangiospores. So these little spores that come from this guy are called sporangiospores. Yeah, so just candy, right? Candy. Now this guy, a chlamydiospore, is basically, here's your hyphae, and the spores are formed internally. Okay? So instead of spores being formed externally, like here and here, the spores are being formed internally, within the hyphae itself. It's called a chlamydiospore. Chlamydiospore. Spore formed in the hyphae. The last one, I call it either a broomstick or skeleton hand. It looks very different from your lollipop, makes sense? Now if you've got a broomstick or a skeleton hand hyphae, that is your conidiophore. Okay? Conidiophore.
Question. We have to know this for the lab or for the class?
No, for the class. Now, if you got me for lab, you gotta learn it both anyway, makes sense? This is class, right? Not lab. In class, yeah. Right now, class, you gotta know this. You may see a picture, right? This is how fungi reproduce asexually.
Looks like hands.
Yeah.
E.T.
It looks like skeleton hands. Now, if you see skeleton hands, okay, for lab and lecture, that's your conidiophore, the stick part, or the broomstick, or the arm part, right? And the hand is your canidia. Okay. So the hand part, yeah, penicillium does that. Hit it, Haley. You may. Isn't that possible? I can put pictures on the test. I can put pictures on the test. That's legal. That's legal.
It's illegal.
All right. So the stalk here, the arm is conidiophore, right? The hand part is canidia. The spores that actually come off, right? Because these spores come off, got it? The spores that come off, they're called conidiospores, right? It's all in the name. It's real simple, right? Think of hand versus lollipop, right? It's real simple. It's easy. All right. Now, yes, Goethe mentioned, yes, penicillium would do this. Rhizopus, okay, Rhizopus is the black red mold would do that. All right, let's keep it moving. Now, here are the divisions, and yes, you need to know them. There's only 4, and you can learn 4, okay? Zygomycota, Ascomycota, Basidiomycota, and the Deuteromycetes. Okay. Now, usually when you hear the mycota, it's referring to fungus, okay? Fungus, all right? All of these divisions is based on how they reproduce sexually. All those other guys was asexual, right? Now let's get into sexual reproduction. Okay. Now this table quickly summarizes the groups. In Zygomycota, they're called Zygomycota because when they do sexual reproduction, they make a zygospore. How easy is that? Make sense? So when they do sexual reproduction, they make a zygospore, therefore they're a Zygomycota. In terms of their hyphae, okay, their hyphae is cenocytic or aseptic, meaning their hyphae have no divisions, right? No septae. They lack those crosswalks. And here's your one little example. Now the Zygomycota, that's the smallest group. In other words, in terms of numbers and different kind of species, Zygomycota is the smallest group. Well, now one more representative. Rhizopus, okay? Rhizopus is the common black red mold. And by the way, the Zygomycota guys, like Rhizopus, you should also know what type of structure they make when they do asexual reproduction. Okay. So Rhizopus would make the lollipop version, right? You know that. Rhizopus or anybody in Zygomycota, anybody there, makes the lollipop version for asexual reproduction, basically the sporangiophore. Got it? You should know that. Now, the Ascomycota, this is the largest and most diverse fungal group. I repeat, okay? So Ascomycota, this is the largest and also the most diverse. Why? Because you've got yeast in there, right? You've got cup fungi, sac fungi in there. They look like mushrooms, but they're not mushrooms. Make sense? They look like them, but they're not. And you also have molds. You've got molds, yeast, cup fungi, sac fungi, all in Ascomycota. Okay? In terms of what they do when they're doing what sexual reproduction, they make ascospores. In terms of their hyphae, they have septate hyphae as well as the last group. Okay? So in other words, the only group with pseudocytic is zygomycota. It makes it easier to learn, right? All the other guys, what? Septate hyphae. Real easy to learn that. Some of them form associations with cyanobacteria or green algae to make lichens. We'll talk about lichens today. Here are your representatives. I'll hold you to only 2 of them, right? You should know these guys. Penicillium, right? Also write in aspergillus, okay? Because aspergillus has been in the news lately in terms of causing fungal meningitis. It's aspergillus. Yeah, it's ascomycota. All right. And also Saccharomyces, that's your baker's yeast, okay? Saccharomyces is what you buy at the store. They're all in this group. And the last group you're probably more familiar with than the other ones, because here's where your mushrooms are, okay? This is Basidiomycota, right? And of course, when they do sexual reproduction, guess what? They make basidiospores. Okay, simple, real easy, short and sweet, septate hyphae. And your representatives, I would just say, you know, your common mushroom, puffballs, earth stars, smuts, and rust. So I repeat, your common mushrooms, earth stars, smuts, and rust. Shelf fungi, they're all in Basidiomycota. All right, real quick, I'll also tell you.
You're missing one there.
What's that, dude? The other guys, okay, the reason why they're not in the chart, I'll tell you right now, you're right, because you've been following, that's good. You didn't see these guys, right? Yeah. You did not see Deuteromycetes in there. Guess what? We don't know how they do sexual reproduction. We don't know how. So that's why they're placed in their own little group. In other words, their mode of sexual reproduction is unknown. We don't know. So the yeast, Candida albicans, your favorite yeast that causes yeast infections, thrush, it's in this group because it's unknown how it does sexual reproduction. Okay, so that's your representative for that guy. Marissa?
Do you want us, can you guys repeat
The chart. This chart.
Do you want us to know the Saccharomyces for
Yeah, that's your bread yeast. Saccharomyces cerevisiae, that's bread yeast. Penicillium, you should already know. And I said aspergillus. Why? Because it's been in the news, right? It's been causing fungal meningitis. Okay, so you should know aspergillus. Okay. Now, yeah, you gotta go through this. You need to see pictures. Is it raining out there? Is it raining in Israel? Okay, if you look out the window, is it raining out there? No, it's good. Okay. You gotta know this. I'm not gonna hold you to life cycles, right? No. I just want you to see the structure they make, right? When they do what? Sexual reproduction. That's the only reason I'm showing you this, right? Don't worry about this part here. Focus here. So basically, when they do, right, sexual reproduction, they make that. So this guy will contain the zygospore. Make sense? Now, basically, this is how all fungi mate. Okay? They've got 2 hyphae, right? From 2 different fungi, okay? One will be the plus guy. One is the minus guy. There is no sperm and eggs in fungi. Got it? They either have plus hyphae or minus hyphae. And just like sperm and eggs will come and meet and fuse, the same thing with these hyphae. Makes sense? They just come together and they fuse. When they fuse, they form a diploid zygote. How do you know? Because I said earlier, most fungi that you see, right, they're what? Haploid, right? Remember that whole discussion? They're haploid. So if you've got haploid hyphae coming together, right, they make a diploid zygote. But again, that diploid zygote will undergo meiosis so that you end up with the haploid adult version, right? Okay. Where's my friend? Okay. Now, of course, this is sexual, right? That you should know. In there is your zygospore. And here is a lollipop, right? So I said that with the zygomycota, right, they make what? The sporangiospore, right? With the sporangiospores. All of this is asexual reproduction. That guy is sexual. That's how they get their name. Ooh, wow. This is morchella. This is a morel. People eat these guys, by the way.
No.
Yeah, they do. They eat morels and truffles. Anyway, these guys are called sac fungi. Here's the deal. When these guys pop out the ground, just like mushrooms, that is called the fruiting body. In other words, when you see a mushroom, or when you see this guy, the sac fungus, that is called the fruiting body. That guy is basically the sexual reproductive structure. Most of that fungus is where? Underground, makes sense? Most of the hyphae is underground, you don't even see it. When they start popping up, that's basically a form of what? Sexual reproduction. Okay. Now, the reason why they're called sac fungi, like this little morel, because inside these little cups, you will find sacs that have the ascospores, correct? Let's see that. So again, inside these guys, you will find sacs that will have the ascospores. Let's take a look at that. So we know the deal here, right? Pay no attention, right? They're just mating, right? They're mating, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we go.
Is that
These-
the outside part?
They're inside. So those guys, these guys here that form, they're actually in the cups. They're in there. You don't see it. They're inside the cups. In those cups, you have these guys. See these sacs? Okay. Those sacs are called asci, okay? One is ascus. See that? Because ascus is here, but more than one is asci. This is why they're called ascomycota. Makes sense? Because when they do what? Sexual reproduction, they make asci. Now inside those asci, they make what? Ascospores. Makes sense? So inside the asci are the ascospores. And I said that the ascomycota guys are also known as the sac fungi, really because these asci are basically sacs. As far so good? And I've already said, right, that when they do asexual reproduction, in terms of their little hyphal structure, I said it's what? Skeleton hands. Make sense? So I say you have to know that too. So here are the skeleton hands, right? Asexual. These guys are sexual. The ascospores inside the asci. So that's what? Ascomycota. Got it? It's all in the name. Last guy, Basidiomycota. These guys are known as the club fungi. Not because I like the party. Not because of that reason. They're called club fungi because under, okay, again, know the deal, right? Hyphae underground. This whole mushroom is the fruiting body. Makes sense? Because it pops out, that's the fruiting body. Now, under the cap, this guy is the cap. Underneath the cap, you see gills, correct? Now, in those gills are structures you don't see. In those gills, you have these club-shaped structures. These club-shaped structures are called basidium. Okay, so far so good? So each club guy is called a basidium, more than one basidia. So far, do you understand why they're called basidiomycota? Okay. Now, on each basidium, you would make 4 basidiospores. So this is when they do what? Sexual reproduction, got it? Okie dokie. Okay, and here's phase Deuteromycetes, right? Because they were on that chart. And the reason why they were not on that chart, basically, is it here? Yep. Unknown sexual stage. In other words, it's not that they don't do it, we just don't know how they do it. Makes sense? We don't know. Okay. Now, basically, their RNA analysis reveals that they are more similar to Ascomycota, even though we're not sure what they do. So looking at the RNA in terms of the sequence, they're more similar to Ascomycota, and that's why we're like, okay, we'll give them their own little classification. We don't know what they do. Your candidate for this, I told you, Candida albicans. That's basically the guy that causes yeast infections in the brush. It's a pathogen. All right. Lichens. Now, we can't talk about fungi without talking about a lichen. So a lichen is basically a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and a photosynthetic organism. Usually it's a cyanobacteria. It can be a green alga, but usually it's a cyanobacteria. Now, if this is a symbiotic relationship, there has to be benefits to both partners, make sense?
Sure.
So, it's probably really easy to figure out what the cyanobacterium is doing for the fungus. What does it do? So what is the cyanobacterium, which can do photosynthesis? What is it doing for the fungus? It provides food, right? It provides carbohydrates for the fungus, right? Okay. Now, what does the fungus provide for the cyanobacterium? What's that? Say it again. Nutrients, because to do photosynthesis you need what? Water, okay? So they can provide water for it. Also, basically a place to live, because they live in the fungus, okay? The fungus will prevent either the green alga or the cyanobacterium from drying out, okay? Makes sense? Because they're living within the fungus. So they both benefit. They both benefit. Now, lichens are pretty cool. They're pretty cool because you can find them anywhere as long as there's no pollution, okay? Now, lichens can be used to indicate the level of pollution in the environment. Because if the environment is polluted, lichens are so sensitive, they won't grow. So if you live somewhere and you see no lichens, it probably means you're in a polluted area. But if you see lichens, it tells you, oh, this place must be pretty clean. Make sense? All right. They grow almost everywhere, except for dark places. Make sense? Does that make sense? They live everywhere except for in caves, right? Or deep in the ocean, because they need what? Light. So as long as there's light, they can live there, and non-pollution. They don't like that either. They're very sensitive to that. Now there are 3 basic forms: fructose, fructose, and foliose. Yeah. Now they can help create soil. When they're growing on rocks, they can break the rocks down and help make soil. And many of them are eaten by animals. So some reindeer, some caribou, and the colder parts of the world, right, they actually eat lichens to get through the wintertime. Got it? You okay, Ted? Okay. All right. So here's what a lichen looks like. Here's your fungus, all the hypofilaments. Okay, here's your fungus. And within the hypofilaments, you have wrapped around little either green algae or cyanobacteria. Now basically, what is this guy? It's basically how they, quote, reproduce. In other words, how do you spread lichens from one part to another part? These guys are called ceridium or ceridia plural. Literally, a piece of the fungus that's wrapped around the bacterium, they just break off, and they're light. So the wind will carry them somewhere else. They land somewhere else, and they just grow wherever they land. So it's basically how they, quote, reproduce, how they spread out. Now here's an actual picture of a lichen. You see all the fungal filaments, and there is, in this case, the green algae cell. Now I want you to look at these pictures, okay? I'm not going to touch you on this picture, though. Someone's like, do we got a picture? No. Okay. No. All right, folios. In other words, you have to understand why they're called folios, right? Why they're called fructose, and why they're called fructose. This is what I'm showing you in the picture. Now, fructose, guys, look like fruiting bodies. In other words, go back to the fungal part, right? The sac fungi with the guy sticking out the ground, or the mushroom doing that. I said what? They are what? Fruiting bodies. Make sense? Right. Now these guys also do what? Come up, right? So since they come out the rock, they're called fructose because they look like fruiting bodies. Make sense? That you should know, right? And the picture helps you to see that they look like fruiting bodies. Now, folios.
And fructose.
Yeah, fructose.
They both are fructose bodies. Not fructose. I don't remember that word.
Fruiting bodies?
Yes.
Fruiting bodies.
No, only this one. So fructose is called that because they look like fruiting bodies.
Okay.
Because they literally come out of the rock, just like a mushroom would, right? Okay. Now let's go to foliose. Okay, like foliage. So far, so good. They look like little leaves on the rock. Makes sense, right? So since they look like leaves, in other words, they grow flat. Okay. So foliose lichens grow flat along the rock. They look like leaves, correct? So it's like foliage, so foliose, okay? And my favorite one, these guys, fructose, it's like crusty, looks like dried paint. Yeah, that's why they're called that. They kind of grow into the rock, like dried paint.
So do animals use foliage or foliose?
Yeah, animals will eat the fructose guys.
No, do they use foliose to camouflage themselves?
They can. They absolutely can. Some animals, some insects can use foliose to camouflage themselves. Got it? So that's why they're called their names. Understood? And you should know that. You got a hand raised? Hit it.
Might be random, but is this like tundra or no? What is tundra compared to this?
Tundra is basically a habitat.
Okay.
That's a habitat.
Okay, but is that found?
They live everywhere
Okay.
as long as they're light
Okay.
and no pollution. That's it. Light and no pollution.
Okay.
Okay? They're everywhere.
All right.
Okay. Algae. I thought we were done with this chapter by today. Oh dear. Algae, okay? Simple, eukaryotic. They are photoautotrophs, okay? So you have to write photoautotrophs. None of them go out and find their own food. They don't have to, okay? They do photosynthesis. Okay, in terms of sexual reproduction, they can do it. Now, if they do sexual reproduction, the cell becomes a gamete. In other words, if you have a unicellular alga, ladies, you with me so far? You with me? I'm just trying to help you out. Yeah, we gotta listen to this though. Listen to this. I'm trying to help you. If the algae do sexual reproduction, the actual unicellular cell becomes a gamete. In other words, you have one little alga cell, and that guy will be the gamete. But then, put it this way, what did I say about the algae? As adults, right? Who listened to me earlier? As adults, these guys are what? Haploids. Which means if you got a little algae swimming around, it's already haploid, makes sense? And all they have to do is find another guy, right? And they just come together, makes sense? And they form a diploid algae. But usually, right, the adults are what, haploid. So you do meiosis to cut that number in half again. Right? I keep repeating it because you may find it on the test, right? See how I teach? I repeat things over and over again. It usually is important. Now, these algae differ in terms of where they're found, the morphology, how they reproduce, and biochemical traits. Real quick, that part don't worry about, but this part you should. Not this part, where is it? There's a table. I'll back up a bit. I want to bring you to this table. In other words, how do you place algae into their groups? That's important. How do you place algae in the groups is based on their pigments. Simple as that. Because they can all do photosynthesis. But algae come in different colors, like red and brown and green. Okay? So based on their colors, yeah, it's based on their pigment. I'm not going to hold you to chlorophyta, right, green, rhodophyta, red, chrysophyta, gold, and brown. I'm not going to hold you to all of that. But you should understand that the algae, right, are put into groups based on their colors. As simple as that. What pigments do they use for what? Photosynthesis, okay? I'm going to get that in before we run out of time. All right. So, in terms of where you found them, most are aquatic. Notice how it says most, which means not all, makes sense? So not all algae are found in the water, okay? Now, if they're in the water, they've got to be in the photic zone, meaning in the top part of the water, so that the sunlight can penetrate, makes sense? You don't find algae too far down in the ocean, right? Because if you go too far down, guess what? Light doesn't get down there, makes sense? So algae can grow in the water as long as they're in this, what, photic zone where the light can penetrate. They can be found in fresh water, brackish water, and even in the ocean. Now, some algae are terrestrial. That's why I said it says most, right? Some algae can grow on trees, some on rocks, okay, some are even terrestrial. Now, most of them have helper pigments or accessory pigments that help capture light. Because chlorophyll is green. Why is chlorophyll green? Who knows that?
It reflects green.
Chloroplast.
Why is chlorophyll green?
Reflects green.
It reflects, exactly. So chlorophyll reflects green, which means that is color that you're wasting. Every color has energy. Roy G. Biv, right? It's energy. And if you're reflecting green away, you're wasting some energy, right?
Yeah.
So just like plants, algae would also have what? Accessory pigments to capture the green that chlorophyll is missing. Now it looks like we ran out of time, which means I'm not sure what you'll do about this chapter. I'll think of something in terms of how you're going to make up this, because on Tuesday, Dr. K is going to be doing viruses, so I'll think of a way for you guys to get this. It's going to be weird, but you might can handle on your own. Justin.
This is to get this table of algae drift.
I don't know if it's this one.
Do you know anything specific, like are there,
Which table is this, Justin?
that 12.4 algae?
What did I say about that algae?
Well, pigments, I know, but like
What did I say about the algae?
you have to know the
Classified
pigment.
geopigment.
Yeah, but you have to know, like, oh, is
No.
this algae,
You don't have to
this
know.
pigment?
No, you don't have to know.
Okay.
Thank you. So that is it. I will see you all on next Thursday, because Tuesday I will be here. Take care.
Next.
If somebody wants a USB of the lectures, I can plug my laptop in and